The 2024 NBA Draft is less than 3 days away, and for the first time since 2010, the Washington Wizards have a top 2 pick. So what I want to do today is examine the 2024 NBA Draft from the standpoint of the Washington Wizards, highlighting prospects to watch, general philosophy, and intel from sources around the league. Also, my name is Tyler, aka Wanzo TV. I'm a Wizards fan. I talk about the Wizards, so let's get going. First things first, let's assess the general assets of the Washington Wizards in the 2024 NBA Draft. So going in, the Wizards have 3 picks. We have the 2nd overall pick, the 26th overall pick, and the 51st overall pick. Because I'm not a weirdo, I'll start numerically, so let's start with the number 2 pick. For those who aren't familiar with the 2024 NBA Draft and its class, let me show you guys in. This is a class that is probably the most undecided, the most random, the most chaos-inducing since 2013. According to a lot of experts in the NBA draft space, this is one of the weaker drafts in recent history, and I would have to agree, at least at the top portion. In more traditional drafts, you can definitely pin down who's going to go 1, who's going to go 2, who's going to go 3, and maybe even further back in a more traditional draft cycle. This is not one of those times. I think there are genuinely 3 prospects in play for 1, 3 prospects in play for 2, maybe like 5 prospects in play for 3. This is a draft that is going to see such a wide range of mocks, of big boards, that we've seen in a very, very long time. Now, as for how that relates to the Washington Wizards and the 2nd overall pick, I believe at this current time, based on different information from different sources and just my personal opinions of their games, I think that we're looking at 3 prospects in play for the 2nd overall pick. Those include Zachary Risacher from JL Bourg in France, Alex Sarr from Perth Wildcats in the NBL in Australia, and Donovan Clingan of the Yukon Huskies of the NCAA. Now, while I did say each prospect has a chance of going number 2, I don't want you to think that this means they all have an equal chance of going number 2. At the current moment, I would predict Alex Sarr has around a 60% chance to be the pick on Wednesday. Now, the Alex Sarr smoke is based on a multitude of different things. What I want to start off first is playing a clip from ESPN's Jonathan Givony on where he thinks the Wizards and Alex Sarr stand as of right now.
If he doesn't go 1, I think number 2 is pretty much a lock to be Alex Sarr to Washington.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. How is Sarr only a 60% chance to go number 2? ESPN's top draft guy is saying he's a lock to go number 2. That is because Jonathan Givony, ESPN's top draft guy, has gotten this wrong in the past. He said, if you remember, in the 2021 draft, the dynamic between Paolo Banchero and Jabari Smith. Paolo Banchero ended up going number 1. However, Jabari Smith was mocked to go number 1 for a very long time. And Givony supported this. He said he would be shocked if Jabari Smith did not go number 1, which he didn't. So I don't want to give Givony's word that gospel. So if he says Sarr's a lock, do not take it as a for sure thing. But to contradict myself once again, I do think that his word means a little bit more than just nothing. I don't want just one time being wrong doesn't mean you're going to be wrong forever. He is a tapped in ESPN guy, so put some weight on his words that if he says it's a lock, barring extreme circumstances, there's a good chance he's going to end up in DC. Another rather big part of the Sarr to DC train is the fact that Sarr has just been unable to get in for a workout with Atlanta. Now, this isn't like Sarr can't make a flight for Atlanta. This is him actively declining to work out for Atlanta. Now, I made a list of reasons on my Twitter, by the way, follow me on Twitter if you don't already, of why I think Sarr might have done this. Number 1 is there's no clear direction from ATL. If Sarr were to come to the Wizards next week, he's going to be a major piece in a rebuild. He knows where he stands with this franchise. He knows where he would stand with this franchise. That is very different from Atlanta. Atlanta does not know what they're doing. They still have DeJounte on their roster. They still have Trey on their roster. They still have Clint Capella on their roster. They have a lot of things that aren't decided just yet. And if you're Sarr, I can see how it's attractive to target a team like us where you know the clear rebuild is happening. Another reason kind of ties into what I just said, but positional overlap in Atlanta is like a big thing. Clint Capella is still there. Onyeka Okongwu is still there. Jalen Johnson kind of plays the 4, and this ties into another reason, but Sarr also might want to play the 4. So there's a bit of positional overlap in Atlanta that doesn't happen in DC. If we draft Alex Sarr, he's going to start with us. He's going to start over Marvin Bagley. He's going to start at the 4. He's going to start at the 5. Wherever he wants to start, he's going to start because he's going to be a big piece in the rebuild, which goes back to the last point. Now, this reason is pure speculation on my end, but I have this, when it comes to draft season, a lot of agents getting involved and different things like that. And I've heard rumors on Twitter, nothing like viable from like Woj or Shams or any big sources. But from what I've heard, there is some rumbles that it's like agent stuff. Like, we'll never understand the inner workings of an agent client front office relationship, so I don't know how much validity that might have, but I think it's a possibility that maybe there's some disagreements with the agent, with the front office, that Sarr just wouldn't want to work out with him. Now, the last reason on my tweet was something I talked about earlier, but Alex Sarr might want to play the 4. We've seen other players his size, Anthony Davis, Vic Wembanyama comes to mind, guys his size who want to play the 4 to have a bigger offensive load. They don't have to sit in the paint all day. They can kind of work on the perimeter. And I can see Sarr wanting to do that. Sarr's an agile guy. I don't know if it's the cleanest fit as some of the other guys like AD, Vic are specimens. And Sarr, I don't know if he fits into that mold. While he might have the size, I don't know if he has the offensive skill just yet. So that's a bit of an interesting dynamic that I kind of want to get into later. But I think it's something to touch on. I don't think that's a big, like, if I'm Alex Sarr, I'm not turning down a workout because I want to play the 4 that bad. I want to go number 1. So I think it's likely one of the other 3 things, but I think this is a very interesting dynamic that could come into play if he does end up in DC. So what I want to do next here is just kind of examine Alex Sarr and how I believe he'll fit into the Wizards with what he does well, what he does bad, and how that will kind of impact our individual situation. Now, I want to preface this by saying this isn't going to be a full scouting report. That could get extremely nuanced. There's so many different layers to Alex Sarr in his game that you could dive into every individual aspect, and I kind of want to keep this light, so I won't dive into everything right now, but I do kind of want to just talk about the overarching aspects of Sarr's game. So, in my opinion, I believe Alex Sarr is the number 1 prospect in this draft, and that's for a couple reasons here. But to start off, I want to talk about his floor. I believe that Alex Sarr has a genuine, pretty high floor, and probably a higher floor than people give him credit for. He's a capable defender, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere. You will see that translate to the NBA level very, very easily. That's a fluid transition. He guards on the perimeter well. He's a great rim protector. He's a great athlete. And he just has an overall defensive instincts and feel that are going to get him on a court immediately. As well as that, he's a force in transition. When he gets the ball in transition, he can push with his athletic tools. He is genuinely one of the biggest prospects in the draft. He's one of the longest prospects in the draft. And he is a good athlete. He can move in transition. He can go with the rock. So he has a lot of underlying things that are going to get him on the court right away. And those things are all well and good, but those aren't what makes a number 1 prospect. What makes Alex Sarr the number 1 prospect in my eyes is that he has all those things to build on, plus his physical tools, his wingspan, his height, his fluidity on the court, that can lead to more explosive developments in his game that can take him that step up. So that'll really be the next step for Alex Sarr. I think we have these foundational skills to build off. Solid feel, good tools physically, good tools athletically, a solid instincts on the court. So we have these tools to build off, but extending beyond just that high floor that I talked about, that is what makes Alex Sarr the prospect that he is. And I really think that speaks as just a microcosm to the Wizards in general. We have this collection of players, Bilal Coulibaly, Corey Kispert, Tristan Vukovic, Deni Avdija, and maybe Alex Sarr, who are these balls of clay in effect, where they have these skills, they have these things that are going to make them playable right now, and they can show a flash here or there, but what's really going to extend them beyond just that is the ability for the front office, Michael Wing and Will Dawkins, to curate an environment to where they can extend their wings beyond just what their floor is. And it just kind of lessen the broadness of that statement. Specifically with the group of guys that we have, I think the next step for them is going to be the half-court situations. When you're in the NBA playoffs, the game slows down. There's not going to be these transition opportunities where Bilal Coulibaly or Deni Avdija can excel, and Alex Sarr potentially. So what we're going to have to do is take these guys and manage to make them half-court players, so where the game can slow down and they're still going to be able to succeed. And you can see on that little sheet that I had earlier, one of Alex Sarr's question marks in my mind is his ability to create for himself in the half-court, or just have that role in the half-court. So just for our collection of guys, creation in the half-court is going to be very big, and that'll kind of factor into what I talk about later with some of the other picks. But yeah, Alex Sarr, he's my top prospect for the draft. I think there's a pretty good chance that he puts on a DC hat on draft night, so that's where I'm at with Alex Sarr. So the next of the 3 that I want to talk about is going to be Zachary Risacher. So Risacher is actually, at the time of this recording, the betting favorite to go number 1 to Atlanta, but that has a bit more context than just him being the favorite to go number 1. When the lottery finished up, it was kind of a consensus that Sarr would be the pick to Atlanta, but as the coming weeks developed and as we got closer to the draft season, Risacher kind of took that spot as the presumptuous number 1 guy. So how that all ties back to the Wizards, I believe that if Atlanta goes Sarr at 1, they say, I don't really care that he didn't work out with us, we think Sarr's the best player in the class, we're going to take him number 1. If that happens, I believe it is a 95% chance that we will draft Risacher in that situation where Sarr would go 1. I think we would pick Risacher at 2. Now, should that be the case and Zachary Risacher is indeed the pick at 2 and we take him, I want to examine how that's going to look from the Wizards roster standpoint. Zach is a bit of a polarizing player in the draft space. If you talk to ESPN, Bleacher Report, guys with affiliations to big organizations, they're pretty high on Zach. He's always been towards the top of their big boards. But if you look more on like a local scale, niche Twitter users, niche YouTubers who cover the draft space year in, year out, they're pretty much lower on Zach. Now, that doesn't really matter because obviously these games going to do most of the talking, but I do think it's kind of just an interesting dynamic that usually doesn't happen with guys towards the top of the big board. Usually there's a set of 5 or 3 guys that are towards the top, and that really doesn't fluctuate on many people's big boards. The order might change, but like Zach is genuinely, if you pick the right mock, you could see him as far back as like 20. You could see him as far back as 10. So it's just an interesting dynamic to keep in your head. So for those who are unaware, Zachary Risacher is a 6'9 wing, which kind of complicates it a bit because Bilal Coulibaly, Deni Avdija kind of also play that wing role 3-4 spot, which was where Zach would play. So I think it'd probably create a situation where Zach would actually have to come off the bench, which would make him the first number 2 overall pick to come off the bench since, ironically, Marvin Bagley in 2018. While the look of a 15 win taking their number 2 pick off the bench isn't super pretty, I don't think it'll matter in the long run. He'll still be able to get minutes behind Bilal, behind Deni, so I don't really see it as too much of a problem, but just from a PR sense, it's not the best look. But like I said, it doesn't really matter from a basketball sense, which is really all we should care about. Now, to kind of just examine Zachary Risacher's game, he's a shooter. This is his role. When he comes to the NBA, he's going to be able to defend and he's going to be able to shoot at a high level. That's what you hope he comes in with. However, he does have some red flags that are definitely redder than that of Sarr's. If you read the little mini scouting report I had on the screen earlier, you'll see that his biggest concerns are his creation and handle in the half court. At the current moment, it just looks awkward. He doesn't create much space on any handles, any moves. He doesn't create much space on drives. He just looks awkward in the half court. And that has kind of led to the skepticism that I was referring to in the past. His lack of handle, lack of creation is definitely scaring some people off. However, I do think it's important to note that he does a lot well, that even though his handle and his creation might not be there right now, that's not a cause for concern, and you can't overcomplicate it when you're looking at Risacher. Zach does a lot of NBA-ready things right away that are going to translate immediately to the NBA game. He's a terrific mover off the ball. He can cut well, he moves off screens well, and he can get himself open for the shot that I said this is his strength. He can move off ball, get himself open, he can shoot the 3 well, and then on the other end, he's going to be able to defend. And as well as that, he can move in transition, which, as I said previously, helps with Bilal, with Deni. This is a team that's going to be able to push in transition, which I think is good. And I hate to bring it back here again, but I do think this is a similar situation, where you're going to have a guy like Sarr, who's going to have things that he is not going to be good at right away. But it's important to have what he does good immediately, and then add to that with the development of Michael Winger, of Will Dawkins' staff. I think a big fear for a lot of people in this draft is that it's not a top-heavy class. It is a class that people are throwing around the buzzword, the role player class. Let's say you're drafting a role player at 1, you're drafting a role player at 2. And I think in that sense, people are then trying to overcomplicate it by saying, oh man, Zach, Risacher, he doesn't have the creation of somebody who's going to be really, really good, so I can't pick him. I got to go farther back. I got to go back. And they're overcomplicating it. You look at him in the vacuum, he's, as I said, I say it again, I'll say it again. He's a good shooter, he's a good defender, he moves well in transition, he does things well. This is going to be a process. You're going to have to take 3, 4, 2 years to really develop his game. And you can just hope that with this development staff, with Brian Keith coming in, that we can hone his ability and work to get what you already have, this role player-esque player right now, and turn it into something that can go beyond that, which is the same thing with Sarr. That's what I want to harp on so much. I think this is a class that if you have the right organizational tools in place, we are going to succeed. And I think we'll see that as time will show. So that's really just kind of my 2 cents on how I think Sarr, how I think Risacher can affect and help this Wizards lineup going forward. We have 2 guys who have some tools to be really solid players day 1, with also tools to become better than they are day 1 as the years progress and as you can develop them more and more and more. Now, briefly, I do want to touch on Donovan Clingan. I mentioned him earlier in the video as a chance to go number 2. I really don't think he has a chance to go number 2, but I do think he has a chance to go number 1 to Atlanta. Atlanta has rumored interest in Clingan, which would give it an interesting dynamic because it would then give us the chance to pick between Sarr and Risacher, which wouldn't happen if Atlanta picks one of the two. We kind of just get whoever's left. But if they were to pick Klingon at 1, that would make it interesting because we would have to pick there. I don't have any 2 cents on where we would go from there. There's been no rumors. The Wizards front office has been super quiet this draft cycle, so I don't know who we would pick there. But I just want to throw it out there because it is add an interesting wrinkle to the draft if Klingon were to go 1. Also, just because I want to include it, we did work out Klingon. Just due diligence, but I'm just going to include this here. Really quick, before I start talking about the 26th pick and just the later first round, I want to touch on how chaotic this draft is going to be. With the amount of uncertainty at 1, that'll heighten the uncertainty at 2, heighten the uncertainty at 3, and so forth and so forth. So I'm trying my best to predict what I think will happen, but this could be one of the most chaotic drafts we've seen in a very long time, just because it's so chaotic, so weak at the top, that it's just going to cause a ripple effect across the entire draft. The entire night is going to be insane. Like I said, trying my best to predict what's going on, but if this is completely wrong, just don't be shocked, because this is going to be in chaos. Now, back to the regular scheduled programming, let's talk about the 26th pick. As I literally just touched on, this draft is going to be so chaotic in the lottery. There's now no chance in the world that I'll be able to predict any finalists for who's going to be there at 26, because it could be such a wide range of guys. So I'm not going to try to do that here, but what I will do is I want to talk about what position I think we should target at 26 and just the overall philosophy I want to see us take as an approach to 26 and how we could move up or down in this draft. First things first, I just want to touch on the fact that we are sitting at the 26th pick. There are a lot of teams around us in the draft order that are likely to move off their first round picks, i.e. the Knicks at 24 and 25 have floated throwing around their first picks. The Pelicans have had rumors that they want to trade their 21st pick for just some second round picks. So what I'm saying here is that the price to move up shouldn't be that hefty. Also, I find that important because Michael Winger and Will Dawkins both come from an OKC franchise where they made it their mission. If they want a guy, they will trade up and go get their guy. And we saw that last year with Bilal Coulibaly. We traded up from the 8th pick to the 7th pick to be certain that we are going to get our guy. So don't be surprised if we're not standing pat at 26 and say we move up to 21 to get the guy that our front office is coveting. So for the general philosophy I want to see us take with this second first is, if you look at the guard room currently, it is Jordan Poole, it is Jared Butler, and it is Johnny Davis. And that's it. If you assume Tyus Jones doesn't come back, only those 3 guards. So at 26 or whatever we trade up, trade down, I would like to see us target a guard at this pick. Also, I do kind of want to stray away from some of these older guards. Some of these older guards who might get picked around this realm might be better in years 1 and 2. But being the rebuilding team that we are and having the time frame that we do to have these guys improve, I would like to see us go with a more upside swing, a younger prospect who fits that guard positional need. Now, like I said, I'm not going to be able to predict who's going to be there at 26, who's going to be there at 21, all that. So what I will do is I'll just compile a little list, and I'll show them on the board here, of just guys that I would want to see as potential picks in this realm. Who are those guards that we could get? Some guys that I kind of like in this group: Isaiah Collier was a top-ranked prospect out of high school, kind of fell after a shaky season at USC, but he's definitely one of the best advantage creators in this group that I have up here. I love this pick. I don't know if he'd make it to 26, but if we got him, that seems like a genuine perfect fit in DC. Another one that I like is Bub Carrington. Bub Carrington, similar type of style, not as like aggressive and strong as Isaiah Collier, but he operates in the mid-range, has a good feel for the game. Those two are probably guys that we'd have to move up for, but if we could get somewhere in there. I like the other guys too. McCain offers some shooting, Cam Christie offers some shooting, AJ Johnson offers a bit of like mysterious physical tools, upside, high school guy, played in the NBL, so he's a bit different. Jacoby Walter, I'd imagine, will go a bit earlier, but he's another guy, shooter. But there's some good prospects in here, and there's a lot of different ways this pick could go. I'm just kind of picking what I would want. I would like a guard position if we could. I would be perfectly fine drafting a forward, drafting a center. We're one of the few teams in the league where we don't have to really worry about who we're drafting, because we don't have, we suck, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have to worry about feeling, oh, we got a guy here that we can't play over. We got a guy, we are open all over. So that's just kind of where I'm at with 26, where I'd like to see it go. Lastly, we have our 51st pick, which is going to be our second round pick. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I'm going to be honest, there's no real formula to a second round pick. It's in finding a needle in a haystack. The success rate of second round picks is extremely low. I went back from 2019 to 2021 in the second round picks, and I found how many were successful, and it was only 29 out of 90 players had, like, by my definition, successful NBA careers, which means like in rotations actually playing minutes, successful NBA careers. However, what I did find was that of that 32% of successful NBA players in the second round, 72% of them were college upperclassmen, meaning they were older players, and only 28% were younger players like freshmen, sophomore. So where I would go with this is look at drafting an upperclassman who maybe played at a good college, just has some years on them, who has a chance to come in and immediately provide an impact. Now that might hurt what I've been saying earlier with having development, having things like that. But if they can come in and they can be good right away, that gives you an asset to move later. If you need to make a trade, okay, we have this 51st pick that we used and he's really good, so we can throw you him, we can throw you that. So it maximizes the value at this position that I think if you draft younger, you might not see with some like a prospect who never works out. If you draft an older guy who might not reach that ceiling, you still have the core of an older guy who can be impactful, and other teams might like that years down the line. And really quick before I get out of here, I've kind of mentioned that the 26th pick, the second round pick, are definitely bodies to be moved up or down. But I also want to touch on maybe acquiring another pick entirely outright, which I think is possible with Kyle Kuzma looming. There was some rumors yesterday that the Kings are still interested and the pick 13's available. So I just want to throw out that is definitely a possibility of us getting a third round pick. This has been rumored that the Wizards front office wants to get a third round pick. So I just want to include this at the end here to show that we might walk out with more than just these 3 picks that I'm talking about. But yeah, that's where I'm at with the 2024 NBA draft from the lens of the Wizards. I think we have those 3 guys that we're looking at with the second pick, and I think that's very solid. I don't see that changing any time soon before the draft. I talked about some like guard prospects that I'd like at 26 if we move up or down, just kind of in that realm for the 20s. And then I also talked about just now just the 51st pick, how I want to see us go older and things like that. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the Wizards and the 2024 draft. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Hope everybody liked the video. I just tried to lay out my thoughts about what I'm going to see. Be sure to like, sub, all that good stuff. Comment Yan Vesely sucks if you made it this far, because Yan Vesely sucks. If you know, you know. By the way, my name is Tyler, aka Wandsworth TV. I will see you in the next video, which is definitely coming soon. So I'll see you then.